But let's move on to other topic, but it's still Trackmania Grand League's topic. Like we mentioned in the intro, it's a crazy year, but it's also some crazy days here in Trackmania.
Yeah.
The rulebook was released the day after the open letter from the Trackmania Grand League players. 16 out of 16 players had signed under it, being mispleased with the communication with Ubisoft Holdal and essentially how the playoff system ended up working up. I heard that you mentioned your opinion on stream yesterday. I thought I couldn't watch it myself because at the moment I was uploading my own opinion to YouTube. So can you tell people what is your opinion about the state of Trackmania Grand League that we are at the moment, even before the season has started?
Well, it is definitely sad that it came down to basically the players having to write an open letter to the orgs to get some support, but also get the letter up into the public to actually raise awareness of the issue that we're facing. And I remember when I actually picked up the rule book 2 days ago, as I was trying to prepare the scripts for stuff that would broadcast on stream on step one, I was like, why did they change the playoff format? Cup mode was fine, and then I tried to understand the final game mode. Reading it 3 or 4 times, I was like, this is just nonsensical. Like point system, I was like, okay, there's still points lost, but now map 3 and 4, you lose half points. All right, I'll try to sneak that in as an explanation. But from a caster's point of view, when you try to get down to understanding the rules so that you can actually break them down and explain them to the spectators, it really becomes hella confusing. And essentially, after what I read, what the implications of the playoff format would be in terms of the length of the entire playoffs and how the matches would be decided, I felt like that doesn't seem like anything worthy of a world-class Trackmania championship. This is supposed to be the premier competition in the Trackmania esports scene, and they're doing a format that is absolutely not worthy of that for the final stages of it. So yeah, I was extremely sad to see that unfortunately it came down to this. I genuinely hope that Nadeo is working to come to an agreement with the players in a way that works out for all parties involved, for the publisher, for the players, for the orgs, also for the streamers who are going to have to try and transcribe to the spectators the formats and whatnot, and also for the spectators for a better show. And I mentioned my opinion about this because it was more out of a kind of reformist kind of mentality. I was sort of like, there's great need for a change in the way that the Grand League is operated and how the format looks like, because we've seen it in the responses, for instance, on Twitter from Hylis defending the choices that have been made in terms of the format for the playoffs, and I felt like it's not healthy for a company's CEO to have that much input on the competition for his main game, when the changes that he tries to bring onto the table and force upon the players are anything but healthy for the state and the future of the Grand League. So I kind of wrote my sort of white paper, I should say, which is a tweet longer that I posted on my own Twitter in the nights, as more of a reformist kind of mentality. I didn't mean that as an attack to Nadeo or to Helis personally, it must be said. I absolutely respect the work that they do. But it was sort of my opinion of sort of a blueprint that we could use for solid foundations on how the Grand League could work. I highlighted ideas such as changes in the way the point system works in the general season, the way the playoffs could be organized. And main thing, the first thing I highlighted that I didn't really delve too much into detail about it was getting a sanctioning body that would take care of all of the sporting decisions. With Nadeo still being involved in the league, but only would mainly be there to try and to basically funnel in the cash prize for the prize pool and get in contact with organizations to propose contract to the players, so that teams enter the Grand League and players get paid, get salary. But the sanctioning body would take care of the rest. So the people making the sanctioning body would be having organizational skills and have experience in either playing or organizing Trackmania tournaments, and that would take care of the rest, establishing the rule book, the code of conduct, coming up with the formats in conjunction with feedback from the players to work out what is best, so that we can actually get to something that is genuinely healthy competition and fair, rather than something that is trying to that we're trying to force upon people, which isn't entirely fair. I did say that in the introduction to that. I think it sums up really my opinion on what we've seen from the rulebook. As a viewer and spectator, personally, I found that the format was really an oddity that really didn't make any sense from any perspective. From the perspective of the player, you get unfairly punished for a single mistake at the wrong time. People that are cheering you on were going to be absolutely gutted and disillusioned when they see you getting knocked out early, especially in the playoff phase. And for us, it's become really confusing to actually try to put the format down in a few basic kind of points that we can get across to the viewer. And fourth thing, the competition would simply be amputated by seeing some of its most anticipated contenders and some of its favorite contenders basically get knocked out way early, leaving a rather beheaded competition that doesn't really feel that genuine, it must be said.
But what do you make of it that, okay, the letter is out there, but what do you make of it that the players actually have to go to that length of, okay, we need to form some sort of union, we need to get all 16 players into a group, we need to try to tell Ubisoft Nandeo what we want, but even after this group created, where they had 3 meetings with the esports manager of Nandeo, that being SoftTB, they still wasn't heard. Now they had to go to the step of actually releasing it publicly. What does that say about the Trackmania Grand League and how maybe it's run? Do you have any sort of idea about how and why we actually have to go to this step of the players are, I don't know, feeling unheard when they are maybe the people that should be heard the most?
Well, I'd say that it would stem, but I think the problem would stem beyond the circle of the 16 players from the Grand League. It also stems from the greater community that's taking part in the Open as well. So you kind of have to tie that into that, because it's sort of like one thing leads to another. But yeah, in terms of how it's run, it really made me feel like the staff at Nadeo is surprisingly close-minded. They're not really taking any kind of external input in terms of the things that matter most. Where there was criticism, they did not try to change it. For instance, the point system with the full points loss after map 3. People were riled up against this format. People were despising the format. Some people despised the format. People were generally unhappy about it. There's been some constructive feedback, potential solutions that could be that have been proposed. Nothing has been taken into account. They wanted to keep the points loss in. Now we get a sort of revised system that we get, but they decided to change something that wasn't really needing of any change. The Grand League Winter playoffs were a fine format, but they decided to change it anyway because they wanted to shorten it due to the fact that it's played online. For me, which isn't really such a valid argument, IMO. And I feel like the fact that it had to come down to this, the 16 best players in the world writing an open letter, signing it, addressing it to the organizations, and bringing that up to public in order to raise the issue, makes it really reveals the sort of sorry state of Nadeo's communication and openness to community input regarding the esports side of things, of competitions that they want to actually put forward. It really reveals that there are some really big inefficiencies in terms of how everything is run. Because, for instance, in the Open Grand League Discord, you do have a feedback channel where you try to get some constructive feedback so that it will be taken next season. I remember, well, it's more along of his renty kind of feeling, but Scotty did. I remember Scotty posting that he suggested the deletion of the feedback channel due to the fact that even though they have been read, none of this has been taken into account. Especially when it came to regarding the seeding system, for instance, of OGL in its first season. There have been talks about it in terms of how it could be fixed in the next season. It was somewhat taken into account because now it doesn't really rely on the skill points for Open Grand League, if I'm not mistaken. I do have to read the rule book about that, but yeah, in terms of other aspects of the competition, such as the point system and the way Champions Mode worked, it's always been declined. And it does feel like it's taken a toll on most of the players, including those in the top tier. And if it really shows that people are starting to get fed up with the way Nadeo is currently handling community feedback, and that we definitely need to try and drive change on how that is taken into account for higher decisions in the esports side of things at Trackmania.
Yeah, it's a good point that you bring up there. It's like, from the feedback channel, it's like everybody's mentioning we are displeased with the group stage, we're displeased with the point loss. Nobody essentially mentioned that they are displeased with cup mode. Ubisoft on there goes ahead and say, let's change the cup mode system and not change the group stage system. So, but now we have it here. We have a situation where they have released a letter. SoftTB announced late last night that there will be actions taken against it, and there will be an updated rule book. I think I posted like 3 times on Twitter to ask people what they make of it. Do you have any idea about what the next step from Ubisoft Nadeo is? Are they now going to listen, or are they still going to continue down the same path and say, we do what we want, this is our event? It's simple. If you don't like it, well, you don't need to play it.
It's all speculation at this point, and I can't really make enough of. I'm too stupid to make an educated guesses about what's going on at the round table of Nadeo right now. But I feel like going for the latter thing of putting hard against hard, as you put it, and saying this rulebook is final, we're not change it. It is comply with it or else. I feel like it would be a bad move, because that would basically be the kind of like the death knell of into any hopes that the Grand League would get any serious serious credentials and would start to earn serious reputation, because basically getting stuff, basically putting a big no against a drive to change that was against a drive to change that is put forward by the players that are taking part in their own sanctioned event. There are contracts that bind the players to the orgs, so there's money at stake. I think money will talk, and we'll basically try to get Nadeo to actually make some changes to address the matter that has been brought up by the players yesterday. But yeah, I feel like if they go for the other route of saying this, we're not making any changes, it is comply with it, walk or die, as we say in French, marche ou crève. It is basically not going to be anything. Nobody's going to have it. Absolutely nobody's going to have it. And even though people would want to boycott, I don't think it's really the right way to go for players, essentially when there's money at stake, because they would lose their salary and not be able to learn to live a living off of it. But yeah, I genuinely hope that it doesn't come to the hard against hard kind of mentality for the sake of the perenity of the Grand League and for the best interest of all parties involved.
Yeah, and you mentioned that there's a chat or a question in chat about, do you think the players would boycott the event if the rulebook doesn't evolve towards more fairness? I mentioned this on Twitter yesterday. It's easier for Ubisoft Nadeo to find 16 more players than for the 16 players in Trackmania Grand League to find an event where they essentially get paid. This is one of the few events where there's a decent cash prize, but then also they play for an org that gives them salary. If they boycott this, they lose, first of all, playing in Trackmania Grand League, and then the chance of winning some prize money, but they probably also will have some problems with the organization that they signed a contract with. So if they're going to boycott, I hope that all 16 is going to boycott it, and it's not going to be like one guy, because then it's going to be that guy only losing it. But maybe if 16 out of 16 say, okay, if this is not going to change, then we are out. Maybe that is a step that could wake them up, but that's also, what is the risk, what is the reward? that is something the players need to take into account. But
that is something that they need to assess. And the main thing, you say that it has to be 16 guys, not just a single loner that basically goes on track. No, I'm not playing while the other ones are playing. It must be a coordinated, fully fledged effort from all the 16 players, and it must be actually added that organizations must back their player, because they could do anything and say, no, we want you to compete, and if you don't compete, then we're basically terminating your contract immediately, and you're not getting any money from that. But we really want, the thing we need to do basically is educating the orgs about what is happening. Especially the newer orgs that are coming into Trackmania, and the new orgs that are coming in for Season 2, they need to be educated on the matter, because they don't really know the game from the first sometimes they don't really know the game from first aboard. Like, they are watching this, I'm like, oh, that seems cool, but I think it's up to the players to get in contact with their staff at the with the orgs, present them the situation, tell them what's at stake, why it is absolutely wrong, the decisions that they are doing, and the reasoning behind the open letter that has been made public, and try to garner their support. Because ultimately, if the orgs are on board with their player and back them up 100%, money is eventually going to talk, and it might actually be the start of us seeing potentially common sense priming over the strength and will of a CEO trying to impose a rule set.